Mmm.
Hi, and welcome back to Hot Off the Press, the show about new releases and the authors that bring them to you. I'm your host, Jim Nettles, and tonight we are stacking up those to-be-read piles. Let's see who all is bringing in those offerings for the evening. So, Jenny.
Hi, I'm Gini Koch. I write the Alien Catherine Kitty Cat series for Doll Books. I also write under a variety of other pen names and in all lengths and genres. And tonight we're talking about my release that just released today, which is my new science fiction and fantasy short story collection. So I'm excited.
Dennis?
Hi, I'm Dennis Myers. I write science fiction. My current series is Rise of the Automated Empire. Final Assembly is out, and Precipice is the second book that'll be out on November 17th.
Dee?
Hi, my name is Dee Norman. I write science fiction, usually as a ghostwriter, and so there's NDAs involved. But I do have one cyberpunk story out under my name, and I also write nonfiction. And tonight I will be talking about Secret Symbols, my new nonfiction book that is coming out this month.
And James.
Hi, I'm J.E. Pittman, and I write the Felix Chance series. Volume 1's out, and tonight I'm here to talk about Volume 2's Second Chance. It's urban fantasy. He's basically a walking Twilight Zone with a dash of Doctor Who, so I write a little bit of everything and blend it all together and have fun with it.
So let's actually start with just kind of the big picture. Jenny, let's talk a little bit of world building here, right? This is a collection of short stories. So it's a bit of some of everything, right? But let's get a hint on kind of what we can expect.
Okay, well, the biggest story from the length side is the Happy Acres Haunted Hotel for Active Seniors, which is one of my most popular pieces. I have had it for sale for a long time as a standalone novelette. And there's a new small press that wanted some of my stuff. And they're like, do you have the next Happy Acres, right? I'm like, I do not. I barely started it. And they said, well, what? You have a lot of other short stories, right? And I'm like, I do. And they said, do you have enough for a collection? And we looked, and I did. So I have a lot of humorous science fiction and fantasy shorts that have been published in other anthologies, and a couple at various different zines. And so they're all in there. So I run the gamut on really all kinds of science fiction and fantasy in here. The connective line is that they're all funny as well as everything else.
So Dennis, this is the second book in your series.
Yes,
so
sir.
Give us a little bit about, kind of what world are we falling into?
Well, this is a world 1,000 years in the future. The Earth itself has been devastated by a war that took place 50 years ago. The Corporate Federation rules supreme around Earth orbit and around Mars and out in the belt. And at the beginning of Precipice, Luna has just joined the Federation. And so we're following Dawn from the first book into as she goes to the corporate headquarters, basically, is a little station called Kigyo. And I'm also, in this book, we're also following the ship captain that she had met briefly in the last book. There's a lot more with his story, and the weapons officer. He goes on leave to visit his girlfriend on another station. That doesn't end well, but it's a lot of fun, and it continues the story. Basically, the first book is the spark, and then the second book, Precipice, is lighting the fuse. Third book, everything blows up. And then the fourth book, they're just fighting over the scraps until they build what will remain.
So, Dee, what kind of inspired this book?
Okay, so I'm the odd man out with a nonfiction book, and it is a book on cartomancy, which is telling fortune by cards. I have been a card reader for nearly 40 years. That just means I'm super old and started super young. But there is a style of oracle deck called a Lenormand deck. It's a 36 card deck, and I always hunted for the perfect deck and never found it. So about 4 years ago, I created my perfect deck. I took my love of emblem books, which were often considered the first instance of multimedia. They date from about the 14th century, the first one. And they're books that take an image and a quote and maybe even a piece of music and a poem. You're supposed to process all of that and come up with the moral or the idea that's being presented on the page. And they have some absolutely beautiful engravings. So I decided to create my own Emblemata Lenormand Oracle deck that uses images from emblem books. And it took 4 years, but now I've finally written the guidebook for it, and it's coming out this month.
So, James, how about your series? What world are we falling into here?
So it's kind of the everyday world, but Felix Chance, luck is his greatest skill, and until he's lost, he can always win. So strange, weird things happen in the everyday world that you can't explain. Well, either it's something out to get Felix, or something he's just kind of stumbled into as he tries to figure out his mysterious past. The second book, I said he was walking Twilight Zone with a dash of Doctor Who. The second one as a soupçon, a quantum leap, as he relives his past lives, trying to figure out the stuff that came before and what bearing it has on the present.
So lots of stuff to be stacking up here and kind of across a whole lot of spaces. So,
yes.
So Dennis, let's sort of dive a little bit deeper here, right? Let's talk about who all we're going on this journey with, right? So we've got the folks we met in the first book, and we're going to be continuing some of that story, but let's kind of dive a little bit deeper. Whose stories are we going along with on this one?
Well, we're still following Dawn as she settles into her new role leading Luna as part of the Corporate Federation. And we still have Elliot Humboldt, who is the antagonist. In this one, he's less of an antagonist, more of an annoyance until near the end. And then we're following Tong Sianotai, the captain of the Pang Yu, and his issue. It was hinted at in the first book, but in this book, he gets into a spot of trouble because of his affair with his engineer. Meanwhile, his weapons officer has gone off to another habitat, and he's met up with his girlfriend's father. And, father is ex-Navy as well. And so immediately gives him a hard time. You know, he's a lot of fun. But there's something else going on this station, which is just barely touched on. And as Jake is starting to figure things out is when things really hit, and it ends up leading to a battle. And I don't want to spoil anything really, but it is an explosive climax, shall we say.
So Dee, looking at, you kind of mentioned the fact that you had to create your own Oracle deck. You're creating the guidebook to go with it. So looking at creating something like this, because again, that's a very personal experience that you're now pushing to share with others. It's about, a lot of the fundamental archetypes and the ideas of all of this. So what is it that you felt was missing, and what is it you're wanting to bring by somebody that's looking to use your deck?
That is an excellent question. Thank you. Thanks for such a meaty question.
That's okay. I just broke Jenny a little while ago. Sorry, Dan.
If you are familiar with tarot decks, which are different from the type of oracle deck that I have created, throughout the Western esoteric history, tarot decks have been layered and layered and layered with so much esoteric and occult information and so many correspondences. And so you have these ideas that this card is associated to this Hebrew letter, associated to this path on the tree of life, associated to, this astrological sign. There's been a lot of things layered on top of the symbolism of the tarot. Not so with the Lenormand. Lenormand is a very, very simple oracle deck that uses a one key image like a ring or a cross or an anchor in order to indicate a particular set of meanings, but there hasn't been a lot of esoteric significance layered on top of that. And so, of course, I needed to come along and overcomplicate things because that was far too simple for me. And I wanted to include more elaborate images than are usually included on Lenormand decks. I wanted to include things like information about moon phases and timing, and also ideas about associations with the four elements. So I basically came along and messed up the simplicity of the standard Lenormand deck to please myself.
That's what we as writers do. We script the apple cart. So, James, let's find out a little bit more about who we're going to be going on along the ride with on this one.
All right, so this one kind of follows two main paths. Felix, during his little vision quest, he's kind of indisposed. So Molly, his basically cohort, fellow con artist, second banana, really turned crowd favorite character. She takes the four in the current time while Felix is seeing just what he's done before. So you've got Molly. Along the way, you meet, I'm just going to use some archetypes. Snarky tree folk, a sassy Sasquatch, the sassiest Sasquatch you've ever met. An excessively verbose immortal alchemist, because, that's always fun. Count of Saint Germain. Shape-shifting shades, charming devils, just kind of, and the drunken moose. You're gonna love Elder. So she's kind of on a journey to find Felix, as Felix is on a journey to find himself and find out ways to help people he cares about.
All right, Jenny. So let's pick a couple of your favorites out of some of the stories.
Okay, well, there are 12 stories in the collection, but after Happy Acres, among the fan favorites are my Missy the Were Pomeranian stories, and those are. Thank you, Dennis. Your check will be in the mail.
He'll take it. He'll cash it.
Right, Missy's a Were Pomeranian, and those are. They're actually middle grade stories, but they're very funny, and it's exactly what it is. Beth and her Were Pomeranian Missy live in the city, the big city, and it's a very hyper realized dealing with the super teams, and Beth has aspirations to be a superhero, and many fun things are discovered along the way. And Missy is honestly the most adorable were thing that you can find. So that's very fun. And then one of my more highly rated stories by Tangent Online is The Vampire's Apprentice, where I had to write a standalone story for an anthology. It couldn't be attached to any of my universes. And the other's like, you can do that. And I'm like, I can, except I have nothing. I had no ideas whatsoever. So I'm going through my idea book, right? And I had to actually look at this book. I had this idea. All I had was the title in two different places, physically written and on my list. And I was going to write a super serious story. Then I realized that if I looked at it the right way, The Vampire's Apprentice, and put an absolute buffoon in who refuses to see what's right in front of his face, and really has thoughts above his station, that it could be very funny. And I made it epistolatory because Dracula. And there's one point where he goes, obviously, Count Alucard cannot be this Dracula person. The names are completely different. That's Willoughby in a nutshell. So it's a lot of stories like that where I've had to come up with something based on an anthology prompt, or I just had a weird experience that I decided, oh, that's going to be good, and things like that. But I enjoy all of these stories. Nothing. If I don't love it, nobody sees it. So I'm very proud of all of them. And I think it makes a nice little collection. I was super thrilled that somebody wanted to do that as opposed to, dragging another novel out of me. Somebody dragging novels out. And this was fun to put together and to have.
Well, just because Alien Kitty Cat number 17, they're hooking up the tractor and the...
It's going to be done soon, I swear to God.
Which one?
17. We're still... Yeah, no, don't even... Jim's like, in 2020 on your first ConTinual panel, you mentioned that you still... Yes, I'm very close to finally done with a moving version. These short stories did not take as much agony to write, is all I can say.
So I'm going to throw one out here that I haven't used in a while, just because I can. And Dee, I'm going to start with you on this. When we're, as writers, as creators, when we're working on these series, there's always a lot of us that's going to make it in there for good, for bad, for ugly. There's a lot of, the ideas, there's personalities, there's the people around us, there's all those sorts of things that make and weave their way in. Working on a book like this, where, it's both you're looking and creating a system, but also and creating how to interpret that. For you, kind of, what's the big meaning that somebody can take away from this and using the system?
I think that for me, and the reason why I'm fascinated with divination systems in general, and this one in particular, is that I feel as though they act as both a comfort and as a method of randomization so that you can view different events, aspects, people in your life from a perspective that you may not have taken up before. And I think that that's a really healthy method to employ throughout your life, is to just shake up your thinking a little bit by throwing a little randomization in it, by using an oracle or tossing a coin or anything that will shake you out of your normal way of looking at things and turn around and look at it a different way. And I think that's a pretty magical process in general. And also a fun thing to do for writers when you have writer's block.
So James, from your perspective, creating series of fiction, the work of fiction, what's something out of this that's really meaningful to you, even though it may be something that nobody would really know or notice or see? That little personal knot that,
Yeah. Well, when I wrote Felix, it was the major undercurrent subtext of it is a lot of my personal journey the last year and a half or so. Kind of, I won't say helping me cope with stuff, but it's, all writers use their works as therapy a lot of the time. So there was a lot of that. There are a lot of jumping off points, we'll call it, in each of the stories. Like something weird happened, like in the very first Felix story. He and Molly take over this ghost restaurant and just kind of they're squatting, and they have a restaurant by right of salvage, essentially. It's all set up, it's there, it's empty, the prep's done, everything, and they just kind of waltz into it and run from there. Well, I actually saw a restaurant like that while I was at some festival, and I just kept waiting for the doors to open of it because I'm like, okay, cool, people will show up when this restaurant opens. No, the chairs were set out and everything. It still had plants growing in the window boxes and along. It was ready to open at any second as soon as somebody turned the key, but it had literally just closed overnight. So I took that, ran with it. Somebody told me another story. I took that, ran with it. Another funny thing happens. It could be like, splashing in puddles and, like you're a kid or whatever. You take that and you run with it with the basic twist of what if. And kind of also going on to a little bit of what Dee was saying, I actually do use tarot in my storytelling process. I use tarot, I use Cthulhu cards, I use Storyforge. Anytime I hit kind of a block or I need something that's totally not me coming forward and I need something more random, I'll go pull a deck of cards and I'll see what comes up, see what kind of like texture or trait or action or something comes up and run from there.
Jenny, how about you? What's something that's buried in all these nice little short stories?
I'm really sarcastic. I don't know that I'd call that buried. I mean,
that's not a shocker.
Right. Basically, if you don't like sarcasm, you're probably not going to like anything I write as Gini Koch. So move along. I can honestly say that they're all other than there's 2 Missy the Rare Pomeranian stories in here. The first one and the sequel. But they're all a little bit different because it's different aspects. Again, different anthologies, not necessarily always a different editor, but different anthologies and different things. And one of my favorites, though, is my unauthorized biography. And it's my favorite because the research that I stumbled upon is why I wrote the book, or I wrote the story, not the book, the short story. And it's something that I think is it's kind of in your face funny, but it's very subtle because I have an author's note about who person A and person B are, right? And when you get to the end, you realize, oh, and I just like that kind of like leading the reader on. This information really matters. And then at the end, you get that, oh, and I just enjoy doing that. And it's one of my, I would call it's one of my smaller pieces. It's not very long. And but it's one I really like. And I'm hoping that readers like it too, because I think I think the humor in there is both sarcastic, but also very subtle. And you have to kind of understand, especially the ending. It sort of all leads back to the beginning. It's very frank.
So, Dennis, what about for you? What's that little personal thing?
Oh, there's just so much. I spent 10 years in the Navy riding submarines. And if you ever want to know what it's like being on a submarine, there's this documentary out. It's called Down Periscope with Kelsey Grammer.
I love my father-in-law worked on that.
Spot on. It's a documentary. So my Navy characters who, they're in a ship that somewhat resembles a submarine. I'm just saying. They have a sense of humor. There's a scene in the first book where there's 2 of them going at each other with pranks. And I swear, every single prank they pull on each other, I have seen on my boat. And at the end of the first book, somebody plays a prank on Elliot Humboldt by fiddling with his recycler. Well, in the opening scenes of the second book, that guy gets court-martialed. Which brings me to the character I forgot to mention last time, Ted Becker. He's a Marine. He's a lieutenant, and he has a team. And after his court-martial and he is demoted, he has to take his team and go on missions. And you get to see the kind of missions that a corporate military gets sent on. Also, there's the running thing between him and Elliot Humboldt as Elliot keeps on trying to get rid of him or, wreck his career, which in a way he actually succeeds. But don't want to give anything away because it's fun. So my characters are people, first and foremost. Even Elliot, he's a person. He's a narcissist. He's, self-centered, and he is borderline, borderline psychopath. One of those really business types, but he's doing everything for his children and his legacy because he wants to be remembered. So he's got a reason. So the other part is, I've worked for corporate America for so long, and I've been introduced firsthand to, it's time to tighten the numbers. Let's start cutting people without regard to how long they've been here, or, he's expensive, get rid of him, So my idea of what a corporate government might look like is, probably not as nice as the corporate people want to sell you that it is, which I get to play with the media too. That's always fun.
So I'm gonna throw one last one out here, and this is always that favorite one, right? Because part of the best part of being a writer, being a creative, anything else, are the ideas you get to explore, the rabbit holes you get to go down, the research. Sometimes it's just the things you discover about yourself or the process. So, James, what's the rabbit hole you tripped down? What's the thing you learned this time?
Oh, geez. So I went deep down like the esoteric side of things. Like one of my main characters, the immortal alchemist, is the Count of Saint Germain. And in researching that, I found kind of, when they switched the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, 1582 or 4, whenever it was. Well, that happened to be on October 4th, which is my birthday. So, of course, that suddenly became Felix's birthday, and or his existence day, born on the last day to exist, which kind of set the tone for the whole overarching series, because this was really just kind of a series of random events at first. And then I was like, oh, wait, there's lots of fun, esoteric underpinnings to a lot of things going on. And I'm like, I want to just do inserts. So I've got a character, there's an immortal alchemist who's, purportedly, in the 1700s, he was purportedly 300 years old. He's sticking around now, and now I'm roping Felix in with him. And I'm just kind of exploring that. And that spun off looking into clocks, looking into tarot, looking into various other things because, well, when they changed calendars, that was basically a conspiracy theory by the Pope at the time to cover up the fact that 10 days were stolen from the world.
So, Jenny, what rabbit hole did you trip over? You're on mute. And
Bet you like that.
And you're still on mute.
I'm still on mute. Sorry. I don't know.
Cost extra.
I don't know if I call it a rabbit hole, but I mean everything gets some form of research. The hotel in the Happy Acres Haunted Hotel for Active Seniors is a real place in Boyle Heights, and its history is very much the history I describe in that story. But I think the biggest revelation for me was that I actually do epistolatory pretty well. And that when I am stuck, going for something epistolatory actually really works. And so she'll go, she was stuck in more things than just the Vampire's Apprentice. But I was not a big fan of epistolatory. Other than Dracula, I didn't like Carrie as a novel because it's epistolatory, and there was nothing scary or frightening about it to me. And so I've never thought very highly of it. It felt to me something you did in the Victorian era, not necessarily something that you would do now. But having tried it, I really enjoy it, and it gives you a lot of fun things. You can do a lot of different voices in it if you want. You can do one person's voice all the way through if you want. And I don't know. I just find that it was nice to discover there's another, arrow in the quiver, so to speak. And that if I'm stuck, just try to figure out how you do this in an epistolatory style. and it'll probably move you along. Now, I don't know that I'd want to do it for a whole novel, but for short stories, I like it.
Dennis, what rabbit hole did you trip over in your sub?
Oxygen. In this book, the Pangyu, which is my hero ship. Now the Pangyu was designed for a maximum crew of 12. They currently have a crew of 5. Oxygen is never really a problem until they take on 500 refugees. I had to go and do the math and figure out, first off, can they make it? The answer was, no, they can't. So then I had to come up with, well, how could they make it? And go down that path of researching, okay, it's a missile cruiser. What kind of rockets do the missiles have? And I had to go down and break down, can you get the oxidizer to give you oxygen? And I had to get my numbers right. It doesn't play so much in the story, except that it, I mentioned, that's how they do it. But I did the numbers and I figured out how to save those people. So yay me.
Or just space 490 of them.
Well, the death count in this book is in the 5 figures anyway. I just didn't,
All right, Dee, for you, what was it you learned, discovered, or tripped over?
Well, when it comes to rabbit holes, I kind of threw myself down a favorite rabbit hole because I love emblem books, and I came from a place where I loved emblem books. The big self-revelation, though, the thing that really surprised me is that the last nonfiction book I wrote was very, very closely tied to my family and my family's folk magic traditional practices. So when I sat down to write this book, I'm like, how nice. This is something different. This is not tangled up in my family or thoughts of my family, memories of my ancestors or people who have passed on. And of course, I was haunted throughout the entire writing of the book. There were constantly things that reminded me of my family. I was adding art to secretly refer to family members and people in my family who are significant to me. And so I think my big self-realization here is that when it comes to esoteric stuff, I cannot fully divorce myself from my family ever. They are a constant presence.
Well, guys, it looks like we've got something for just about everybody. Let's go stack up those to-be-read piles. But before we get out of here, let's make sure everybody knows where to find you guys. Website, social media, and of course, let's make sure they know where to find the book as well. So, Jenny?
Okay, GiniKoch.com. You can find pretty much everything off of my website. I'm all over Facebook. You can also join my free newsletter from my main Facebook fan page, which is Hairspray and Rock and Roll. I'm on X, Twitter, Blue Sky, and Pinterest. The book is available pretty much from all ebook retailers, and if you want a physical copy, the publisher's having a little problem with Amazon, but Barnes & Noble has come through, so you can buy your physical copies through bnn.com.
Dennis?
Yeah, you can find me at automatedempire.com. I'm on Facebook and Mastodon and Instagram. You can find my books on Amazon.com or ChrisKennedyPublications.com.
Dee?
You can find me at blackcandlecottage.com. I'm on Instagram at blackcandlecottage, and my book is available on Amazon and will soon also be available on my Etsy site, where my deck is also available. And of course, on Etsy, I am also Black Candle Cottage.
And Mr. Pittman, sir?
All right, my website is halfacrepond.com. It does play a role in most of my stories, so it is my main site and my main hub. You can also find me, if you can't figure out how to spell that, at jepittman.com. I'm also on Facebook, J.E. Pittman Writes, Instagram and Threads at j.e.pittman, and you can buy Felix Chance and any of my other works on Amazon, and there's a shop link on my website, so you can find me there.
And I've had the pleasure of being your host tonight. And you can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentialsworkshops.com, thespeculative fiction academy.com, creatingprose.com, and of course, here at ConTinual. and go stack up those to be read piles. We'll see you again soon.